Hi, I'm Candy Berry, and this is my informative speech. I used to think a drug addict was someone who lived on the far edges of society, wild-eyed, shaven-headed, and living in a filthy squat. That was until I became one. That's a quote from Catherine Kemp's memoir about her addiction to prescription painkillers. And you may wonder what that has to do with the rise of heroin use in the United States, but studies show there's a direct link between the two. Today I'm going to discuss that link, show you a graph about the increase in the epidemic, and discuss the ways that researchers show that we can combat this issue as a society. Interestingly enough, on the SurveyMonkey results from my classmates, when asked if they or someone they knew had ever had a problem with prescription painkillers, 61.5% responded that they had. And on a question of whether they or someone they knew had ever tried heroin, the same result, 61.5%, which I found really interesting. The first thing I'm going to discuss is the link. According to the Medical Laboratory Observer, authored by Hetty and Haverstack, the generally accepted theory is that new heroin abusers are or have been abusers of prescription painkillers, specifically opioids such as Vicodin, Percocet, and OxyContin. The way that those are related to heroin is that they are part of the same drug category. So prescription painkillers such as those are considered man-made or synthetic versions of an opioid, whereas heroin in its purest form is also an opioid, only in an organic version. The other similarity is that tolerance can build up quickly where a person would use more and more, therefore becoming more addicted. It also is linked by the availability. When the problem of prescription drug abuse began to rise, drug monitoring programs were put into place. And that would decrease the supply of the prescription painkillers, but it inadvertently increased the supply of heroin. Just to give you an example, U.S. authorities in 2013 seized 2,162 kilos of heroin, as opposed to in 2007 only seizing 367 kilos. Now we're going to take a look at the rise of the epidemic on this bar chart. The top line represents the opioid sales, and this is from the Drug Enforcement Administration from 2015 reports. The middle line represents the opioid-related deaths, and that's from the CDC in 2015. And the bottom line represents opioid treatment admissions from the treatment episode dataset from 2014. This is from 1999 to 2013, so this is quite an increase. And this represents per 100,000, which seems staggering. According to Morbidity and Mortality Weekly Report, dependence on or abuse of prescription opioids has been associated with a 40-fold increased risk of dependence on or abuse of heroin. And a lot of heroin-related abuse parallels the heroin-related deaths, unfortunately. And this problem seems quite overwhelming, but luckily there are some solutions. In Judy Foreman's book, A Nation in Pain, she addresses some of the ways that we can combat this issue as a society. First, she points out in her mind that chronic pain is a bigger problem than heart disease, cancer, and diabetes combined, with our government only funding about 1% of their vast budget on pain research. And also that a lot of the pain research that's happening is being funded by the exact pharmaceutical companies that make the opioids. She also expresses that there are other ways, non-opioid choices for people to have. And that would be mind-body, such as placebos and cognitive therapy and hypnosis, or exercise, which would release our body's own pain-fighting mechanism called endorphins, and alternatives such as electrical stimulation and injections. There's also a drug, and fortunately if someone's having a heroin overdose, it's called Naxalone, and it will instantly bring them out of that withdrawal and restore breathing. The nice thing about it is that it's there's virtually no potential to abuse that drug. And Josh Hicks from WashingtonPost.com points out that Maryland was one of the first states to allow pharmacies to dispense this to those who are trained and certified in their overdose response programs without a prescription, thereby allowing it to be more widely available besides hospitals and clinics. In conclusion, there's definitely the links between the two, and it has to do with pain and it has to do with availability of the drug. Luckily, there's hope, but it does involve, in most cases, the non-opioid choices. I was glad that my classmates expressed interest in my topic. There was an overall consensus that painkillers are a huge problem for our society right now, and the majority also felt that the government needs to be on board with those solutions. Thank you.